Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back into the video today. And today we're going to be talking about a potential trade for the Detroit Pistons to potentially trade for Zion Williamson, the Pelicans star. In an article the other day, about 2 or 3 days ago, it was an article on Bleacher Report that was titled 5 Trade Ideas to Blow Up the 2023-24 season. And one of those trades was involved was Zion Williamson headed to the Detroit Pistons. Let's go over what those trade details would look like to send Zion Williamson to the Detroit Pistons. And this trade the trade details I'm about to mention were, this trade idea was by Bleacher Report. So the Detroit Pistons would receive Zion Williamson and Kira Lewis Jr., and the Pelicans would receive Bojan Bogdanovic, James Wiseman, Killian Hayes, a 2026 first-round pick, top 3 protected, and a 2028 first-round pick. I know Zion, a guy, 23 years old, first overall pick in 2019, has had a lot of health problems. I just don't know if that's enough for Zion Williamson. Part of me feels like maybe the Pelicans would want an additional player or maybe some upgraded players in that trade. Maybe, instead of Killian Hayes, maybe they want Marcus Sasser. Maybe, honestly, I could see the Pelicans potentially wanting Marcus Sasser, rookie, who was drafted with the 25th overall pick from Houston. And then I could also see, instead of them wanting James Wiseman, I could also see them potentially asking for a center, potentially asking for either Isaiah Stewart or Jalen Duren, which, the Pistons are definitely not going to trade Jalen Duren. So would a Bojan Bogdanovic, Marcus Sasser, and Isaiah Stewart and 2 first-round picks be enough for Zion Williamson in the Pelicans' minds? Maybe, potentially. I don't know if the Pistons would be willing to give up that much. But as of for the deal that Bleacher Report came up with for Zion and Kira Lewis Jr., for Bogdanovic, James Wiseman, and Killian Hayes and 2 first-round picks, I don't know if the Pelicans would do that deal. Bogdanovic, a great player, averaged 22 points per game this season, 41% from 3, and averaged 3 assists per game and 4 rebounds per game. Great player. And Wiseman, it's looking like he's maybe starting to revamp his career, averaging 10 points per game and 6 rebounds per game this season with the Pistons and the Warriors after, being the 2nd overall pick in 2020 and got traded to the Pistons and looked great in Detroit. And then Killian Hayes, also another bust in this draft, was in the top 10, just like James Wiseman, was the 7th overall pick in that 2020 draft. He averaged 10.5 points per game this season with 3 rebounds per game and 6 assists per game for the Pistons. I don't know if the Pelicans would want Killian Hayes, and I feel like I feel like the Pelicans would probably prefer rookie Marcus Sasser instead of Killian Hayes, and I feel like they'd maybe prefer Isaiah Stewart or Jalen Duren over James Wiseman in a potential trade for Zion Williamson as well, which there's no way in hell Jalen Duren is being traded. So I feel like in my opinion, I feel like the Pistons would have to give up Jalen Duren. I feel like the Pistons would have to give up Isaiah Stewart and then potentially Marcus Sasser with Bojan Bogdanovic and 2 first-round picks for Zion Williamson. Is that worth it for a guy who is a stud and would be great next to this for this Pistons team? You pair him in a lineup with Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey and Asar Thompson and Zion Williamson, and who's starting at the 5, and Jalen Duren. You have that starting lineup and some decent bench pieces. They have Monte Morris. They have Joe Harris as well. If this trade happens, they still have James Wiseman off the bench, still have Killian Hayes off the bench, have a solid bench besides that. And then with Monty Williams, I think, even though, now he's on the Pistons, I still think Monty Williams, a top 5 coach in basketball. I feel like this Pistons team, with Zion healthy or not, I think this Pistons team would be pretty good. And I have this good feeling And I know people probably will disagree. Maybe some will agree. But I have this really good feeling that Zion Williamson will, I'm not going to say he's going to be very healthy this season, but I think Zion Williamson will play more than he played last year. Of course, he barely played at all. I don't think he played after December last year. But I think Zion will, I think it's going to be a different season for Zion. I don't know if he plays over 50 games. That's a big question I have for myself. Will Zion play over 50 games? Maybe, possibly. But I think Zion plays way more than he did last season. I think Zion maybe plays 50 to 55 games next year, maybe a little bit less, maybe 48, maybe 45. I don't see Zion Williams playing under 40 games next season. I would be surprised if he doesn't. I think Zion will be way more healthy this upcoming season, the 2023-24 season. And I think Zion will have a good year. He was having a great year, and the Pelicans were great. The Pelicans were one of the top teams in the Western Conference when Zion was fully healthy. He was averaging 26-7. He was looking like a potential MVP candidate. You add in Zion, a healthy Zion, with Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey in the backcourt, and then also Zion being in a lineup with rookie Asar Thompson and Jalen Duren going in his second year, and it's looking like Jalen Duren is going to be way better in his second year with a head coach in Monty Williams and a really solid bench with veterans like Monte Morris and Joe Harris and some other players off the bench like James Wiseman and Killian Hayes, and Alec Burks as well, if he's still on the roster. I don't know. This Pistons team would be pretty scary adding in Zion Williamson, but I really, really highly doubt this trade happens. I think the Pelicans are going to keep. I think the Pelicans are going to keep Zion Williamson. I was watching on Sunday. I was watching a New Orleans Saints and Kansas City Chiefs preseason game, and it was on NFL Network, and the broadcast was the New Orleans broadcast, and they had on the Saints broadcast had Saints president, who is also the Pelicans president, on to talk about the Saints and just everything in general. They had him on for a good 5 minutes, maybe a little bit more, and the play-by-play announcer for the Saints in that game is also the play-by-play announcer for the Pelicans. And at the end of the interview, and at the end of, or I don't know, do you call that an interview? I guess you do. The play-by-play announcer for the Saints, who is also the play-by-play announcer for the Pelicans, did start to bring up the Pelicans with the president, and they started having a little bit. I can't remember everything that was said, but they started having a little bit of a conversation about the New Orleans Pelicans and about how they were a really good team last year. They just had problems with health, and the president did say that he thinks he's very excited for this upcoming season, and he thinks that this Pelicans team, if they are able to stay healthy, and I would assume that means Zion as well, that this Pelicans team will be way better this upcoming season and to watch out. So, I mean, just hearing that right there, it sounds like, hearing that from the Pelicans president, it sounds like the Pelicans have no plans to move on from Zion Williamson. Although this would be a great trade idea for the Detroit Pistons, I think there is no chance the Pelicans move Zion Williamson. I think his value is too low after not having a good season, being injured a lot during last year. He had a great season. When he was on the court, he was great. Averaged 26-7, looked like an MVP candidate, made the Pelicans look like a top 4 team in the Western Conference. But he was on the sidelines way more than he was on the court. And I feel like the Pelicans, even if they wanted to trade him, they wouldn't, because his value is low with how much he did not play last year. So I think the Pelicans will definitely keep Zion Williamson, and it'll be interesting to see how he does this year and how much he plays this year as well. Use your thoughts. That's it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and peace out. Let me know your thoughts on the trade idea.